Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. So we shall continue with the central nervous system. So as you all aware, we had started with the brain in the last lecture, wherein we have seen the development of the brain in brief. Okay, so in the embryo, which are the different vesicles from which actually the adult parts are developed. Okay, so the cavity, it generally develops into the ventricles, and the wall, it develops into specific parts of the adult brain. Okay, so we shall begin with the parts of the brain in detail. Also, we have covered the cerebrospinal fluid in the last lecture, which helps in the protection. Even we have seen the protective layers. Okay, so to start with the parts of the brain, we'll consider the brain stem and the reticular formation in this particular video. Okay, so just to review the parts of the brain, it has four major parts, right? The brain stem, the cerebellum, the diencephalon, and the cerebrum, which is the largest part. Okay, so in this particular video we shall consider the brain stem, and since reticular formation, it is mainly associated with the brain stem, we'll be talking about the reticular formation, what exactly it is and what are the different functions which it carries out. Okay, to start with the brain stem, it is a part of brain. It's a part of brain, right? We have seen that there are two parts of the CNS, the spinal cord and the brain. So we have considered the spinal cord in detail, right? This one is the spinal cord which passes through your vertebral column. So we have seen the anatomy of spinal cord, external, internal anatomy, protective layers, and also we have covered the functions of the spinal cord. So it mainly has integrative function in the form of reflexes and also propagation of the impulses. So it conveys the impulses from the periphery towards the brain. So the second part of the central nervous system is the brain, okay, which is mainly divided into these four parts. Okay, so the inferior part of the brain, it comprises of this brain stem. Okay, so it lies in between the spinal cord and the diencephalon. That's the diencephalon. It comprises of thalamus, hypothalamus, and the epithalamus. So just inferior to this diencephalon and superior to the spinal cord, so in between these two parts lies the brain stem, and it is divided into three structures. That is, the inferior most part is known as the medulla oblongata, or simply medulla. The middle portion is known as pons, and the superior portion is known as the midbrain. So these are the three main structures which are the parts of the brain stem, and extending through the brain stem, entire brain stem, is the reticular formation. So it's nothing but the network of the gray matter and the white matter. So it has several functions, as you can see from the arrows. It is supplying to various areas of the brain. Okay, so we'll consider this reticular formation also in detail, but this is also part of the brain stem, reticular formation, as well as it extends up to the diencephalon also. Okay, to start with the parts of the brain stem, we'll consider the medulla oblongata, which is the inferior portion of the brainstem. Okay, so medulla oblongata, or simply it is called as medulla. So it lies just superior to the spinal cord. Okay, so it is in continuation. That's your spinal cord. Remember the structure of the spinal cord, little bit oval shaped. So your medulla oblongata, it continues along with this spinal cord, and it forms the inferior part of the brainstem. So this medulla oblongata, it begins at the foramen magnum. Remember what is foramen magnum? Can you recall what it is? Yes, that's the opening at the base of your skull, at which the spinal cord arises, right? Remember, under spinal cord also we had seen that it begins at the foramen magnum, inferior to it, and just superior to it from foramen magnum extends the brainstem, and the inferior part known as the medulla oblongata, up to the inferior border of the pons. So these three structures are in continuation with each other, and it is round about 3 cm in length, extending from the spinal cord superiorly. Okay, now this medulla oblongata, it comprises of the white matter as well as the grey matter, as you can see. Okay, so the white matter, it consists of all the sensory tracts or the ascending tracts. What are sensory tracts? These are the tracts, means the collection of the axons in the CNS, and these are sensory, means they will convey the information in which direction? That is from the spinal cord towards the higher centers, that is the cerebrum. So they contain the ascending tracts as well as the motor tracts or the descending tracts, because they convey the information from the higher centers of the brain towards the spinal cord. So the white matter comprises of both the sensory as well as motor tracts, which are extending between the spinal cord and the other parts of the brain, the higher centers of the brain. So it acts as a part which helps in connecting the spinal cord with the higher areas of the brain, to send the sensory impulses and to convey the motor impulses from the brain, higher centers of the brain, which are processed, and to give the output towards the spinal cord, from where it will move outwards in the form of spinal nerves, and it will reach the effector. Now, some part of this white matter, it bulges on the anterior side of the medulla. That's the anterior side, this one, front side, and that's the posterior aspect. So in the anterior region, as you can see, that white matter, it forms bulges. That's a white matter, right? So it forms bulges on the anterior aspect, and these protrusions are known as pyramids. So this pyramids, they comprise of the white matter, and white matter, what does it consist of? It consists of the myelinated axons, right? So in these pyramids are present the large corticospinal tracts. Remember the corticospinal tract, anterior corticospinal tract, lateral corticospinal tract, which we have considered in the spinal cord, functions of spinal cord. So these are the tracts which are carrying the motor information from the cerebrum towards the spinal cord, right? Corticospinal. That means it is carrying information from the cerebrum cerebral cortex towards the spinal cord, and it is this particular tract is present in the lateral white column. That's why this is known as lateral corticospinal tract, whereas this one, it is known as the anterior corticospinal tract because it is present in the anterior white column of the spinal cord. Okay, so coming back to the medulla. So these pyramids of the medulla, it mainly consists of these axons of this corticospinal tracts, as you can see. Now what is the function of this corticospinal tract? That's to control the voluntary movement of the limbs and the trunk. Now there is one speciality with these tracts in these particular pyramids. It's something which is happening over here, as you can see. What is happening? Now corticospinal tracts, it will be present on both the sides, right? Remember the spinal cord, it is divided into two halves. Right hand side to control the right hand side of the body, and the left half of the spinal cord to control the left hand side of the body. So all the spinal nerves, these are in the form of pairs, right? Okay, so whatever information is processed by the brain, that will also be carried towards both the sides of the spinal cord. But there is something which is happening over here with these corticospinal tracts, right? As you can see, what is happening? The one which is present on the right hand side, this is your right hand side, okay, because this is the anterior part. This is not the left side, that's your left side. Okay, now what is happening? The corticospinal tract, as it descends downwards, just superior to the spinal cord, the one which is present on the left hand side, it is crossing over to the right hand side, right? And the tract which is present on the right hand side, it is crossing over to the left hand side. 90% of these axons, not all, some are traveling in the same side, right? 90% of these will cross over to the opposite side. And this particular phenomenon is known as the decussation of the pyramids. Decuss means crossing. So this particular crossing of the axons, it will explain why the right hand side of your brain controls the left side of your body, and the left half of your brain, it controls the right side of the body. I hope you all are aware of that. That's because the motor neurons which are descending downwards, they cross to the opposite side. In the form of decussation of the pyramids which occur in the medulla. Now, apart from these tracts, the medulla also contains several nuclei. Now, what are nuclei? Nuclei in the CNS. Remember the ganglia and the nuclei. These are the group of cell bodies, right? The group of cell bodies in the CNS, it is called as nuclei, and the group of cell bodies in the periphery outside the CNS, these are known as ganglia. Okay, now this medulla, it's a part of CNS, right? So the group of cell bodies will be called as the nuclei. Now these nuclei, they control several vital body functions. Say for example, there are nuclei for regulating the vital activities through the cardiovascular center and the medullary rhythmicity area. That's the cardiovascular center. You must have come across this when you have studied your CVS. So this particular center helps in regulating the heart rate, the force of contraction, the diameter of the blood vessels. So the heart, which pumps the blood, its activity is regulated by the cardiovascular center. Does it pump the same amount of blood all the time? Is it? What happens when you are exercising? Your heart works harder, right, to pump more blood because your muscles are needing more oxygen, more energy. So your heart contractions or the rate of the impulse generation at the SA node, that also changes as per the requirement of the body. The diameter of the blood vessels, if there are any changes, these are monitored by the cardiovascular center. Accordingly, signals are sent. Okay, so under the regulation of the cardiovascular system, you all must have studied about the cardiovascular center, which is located in the medulla oblongata. Apart from this, there is medullary rhythmicity area. That's the one. So it comprises of the inspiratory area and the expiratory area. So both these help in controlling the respiration. So it adjusts the rhythm of the breathing as per the need, as per the situation. It is altered by these medullary rhythmicity area. Apart from these vital functions, now these are vital functions, right? Your heart, the contraction of the heart, your ventilation or breathing, these are all vital functions, right? Now apart from these, there are other nuclei also which are present, which control the reflexes. Remember the reflexes? What is a reflex? It's an unplanned, sudden activity which takes place in response to some stimuli. So here the integration takes place either at the spinal level or sometimes it takes place in the brain stem, remember? So such kind of reflexes are known as cranial reflexes. So these are the ones. So vomiting reflex, swallowing, sneezing, coughing, hiccuping. It takes place suddenly, right? So the vomiting center which is present in the medulla, it causes vomiting if it is stimulated. The CTZ, that's the trigger zone. So any drug or any substance which is present in your blood can gain easy access to this vomiting center. It can be stimulated to initiate the vomiting reflex. That's the forcible expulsion of the contents in your upper GI tract through the mouth. Then there is deglutition center. Remember this deglutition center when we had discussed about the digestive system. Sorry. So the act of deglutition or swallowing, wherein the food moves from your oral cavity into the pharynx, that's the act of swallowing. So that's under the control of deglutition center. The sneezing, which involves the spasmodic contraction of the breathing muscles, so that you expel the air out of the nose and mouth forcibly. Coughing, that means a long drawn deep inhalation and a strong exhalation followed by that, which sends sudden blast of air from the upper respiratory passages. So, and if any foreign substances enter, you either sneeze or cough. Then next is the hiccuping. It is the spasmodic contractions of the diaphragm, which is a muscle of the respiration, which makes a sudden sharp sound as you inhale. Then lateral to these pyramids, these are the two pyramids of the medulla oblongata, right? So lateral to this are small oval shaped swelling. Can you see that? On either side there are small swellings these are called as olive. These are the ones. So on either side it will be present. It is not shown over here to focus on the internal details. Okay, so on either side of these two pyramids, which are present on both the sides, are present small swelling called as the olive. Now within this olive is present the inferior olivary nucleus. This is the one. So this nucleus receives the input from the cerebral cortex, that's the higher center, red nucleus which is present in the midbrain, which is a part of brainstem, and the spinal cord. Now these neurons of the inferior olivary nucleus, they extend towards the cerebellum. So here they regulate the activities of the cerebellar neurons. Okay, cerebellum, which is another part of the brain. Okay, so by influencing the cerebellar neuronal activities, this particular nucleus, it provides the instructions which are used by the cerebellum to make some adjustments in the motor activity as you are learning new skills, motor skills, some new techniques if you are learning. So those adjustments in the movements or the muscular activity, that's possible because of this influence of the inferior olivary nucleus neurons. And apart from this, there are also nuclei present which are associated with the sensation of the touch, pressure, vibration, conscious proprioception, that is the position of the body. So these are located in the posterior part of the medulla. So these nuclei include the right and the left gracile nucleus. Gracile means slender, and another one, that is the cuneate nucleus. These are the ones. That's the gracile nucleus, the two on either sides, and that one is the cuneate nucleus. So there are cuneate nuclei on either sides. Now do you all remember the posterior column which contains the tracts, the ascending tracts or the sensory tracts, which is a part of the spinal cord? It comprises of these two fasciculus, right? Gracile fasciculus and cuneate fasciculus. So the sensory neurons which are ascending from these gracile fasciculus and the cuneate fasciculus, they form synapses at these two nuclei. That is, the neurons which are arising from the gracile fasciculus, they form the synapses in the gracile nucleus. Zoom it for you, it will become more clearer. That's the gracile fasciculus and that's the cuneate fasciculus. So as you can see that this is a sensory nerve which is shown over here, right? So this is a tract which will comprise of a number of axons. So this neuron, it will ascend into the medulla towards this gracile nucleus and it will form a synapse over here. So from here the second neuron is arising, which will then cross over to the opposite side and it will then carry the signal further. Similarly, the axons arising from this cuneate fasciculus, they will ascend and form the synapse in the cuneate nucleus of the medulla. From here the second order neuron will begin, it will cross over to the opposite side and it will ascend upwards. Okay, so this sensory information, it is then conveyed towards the thalamus. on the opposite side as it crosses over towards the opposite side, right? So this axons then ascend towards the thalamus, which is located over here. So in the meantime, it is passing through this particular structure called as medial lemniscus, which is the white matter which extends through the medulla, pons and the midbrain, all the three parts of your brainstem. That's the medial lemniscus, through which these neurons are ascending upwards to convey the information towards the higher centers. So these tracts of the posterior columns and the axons of the medial lemniscus, both of these taken together, these are called as posterior column medial lemniscus pathway. Apart from this, the medulla also contains the nuclei which are components of the sensory pathways for the gustation, that is sense of taste. The gustatory nucleus is present. For the audition or the hearing, the cochlear nuclei are present, and for equilibrium, that is a balance, that is the vestibular nuclei are also present. So here, as you can see, that the impulses which are received from the receptors present on the tongue, these are in the oral cavity, these are ascending towards the gustatory nucleus. As you can see that these neurons are synapsing at this particular nucleus through these three cranial nerves: vagus nerve, 10th cranial nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, that is the 9th cranial nerve, and the facial nerve, that is the 7th cranial nerve. So this signal of taste sensation from the taste buds of the tongue, it is carried towards the gustatory nucleus, where it forms the synapse with the next neuron, which is then carrying the signal towards the thalamus and the primary gustatory area of the cerebral cortex. Apart from this, there are cochlear nuclei also which are present. Okay, it receives the impulses from the cochlear branch of the vestibulocochlear nerve, that's the 8th cranial nerve. So it gives the input over here, it synapses, and then it carries the signal towards the higher center, towards the thalamus and in the primary auditory area in the cerebral cortex, so that you sense the hearing. Then the vestibular nuclei which are present over here, there are many. So they receive the impulses from the inner ear. It's a component of equilibrium pathway from the inner ear towards the brain. So this particular signals arises from the proprioceptors, which are continuously monitoring your body position. So if the equilibrium is lost, say for example you are traveling in a guard section or you are riding a roller coaster, what happens? Your body equilibrium is disturbed. So that is conveyed via these vestibular nuclei towards the higher centers, that is in the thalamus and towards the vestibular area in the cerebral cortex. Apart from that, the medulla also contain the nuclei which have associations with the 5 pairs of the cranial nerves. That is the vestibulocochlear nerve, 8th cranial nerve associated with hearing, glossopharyngeal or the 9th nerve which is associated with taste, swallowing and salivation. The vagus nerve, that's a 10th cranial nerve which is associated with the pharynx, the larynx and most of the thoracic and abdominal viscera. Accessory nerve, that's a 11th cranial nerve which is associated with the swallowing, and hypoglossal nerve, that's a 12th cranial nerve which is associated with the movement of the tongue as you are speaking or swallowing. So this to do with the medulla oblongata. The next part is the pons, the middle portion. Pons means bridge. So it's acting as a bridge in between these parts, right? Between the medulla and the higher centers, or the spinal cord and the higher centers. So it lies superior to the medulla and anterior to the cerebellum. It's anterior. This is the anterior side, right? So it lies anterior to the cerebellum. And it's about 2.5 centimeter in length. And just like medulla, as we have seen, there is white matter which comprises of the tracts, and there is grey matter which comprises of nuclei. So similarly, the pons also comprises of the nuclei and the tracts, which comprises of bundles of axons. So some of these axons which are present in the pons, they connect the right and the left hand side of the cerebellum. So this helps in connection in between the two hemispheres of the cerebellum. The other tracts, they act as the ascending sensory tracts or the descending motor tracts, just like what we have seen in the medulla. Now the pons, it has two main structural components, the ventral area and the dorsal region. The ventral region meaning the ones which is present in the anterior area, and dorsal region means the posterior region. Now the ventral region, that is the one which is present towards the anterior side of the pons. It forms a number of synaptic relay stations. It comprises of the scattered grey centers called as pontine nuclei. So it acts as a relay station for many types of neurons. So a number of neurons will be entering and exiting these particular nuclei, which will carry a particular type of signal, which provides the connection in between the cortex, which is the outer layer of the cerebral hemisphere, with that of the opposite hemisphere of the cerebellum. So cerebral hemisphere, which is a part of cerebrum, it is connected with the cerebellum through these pontine nuclei. The connections will be relayed in these particular areas. So this will help in coordinating and maximizing the efficiency of the voluntary motor movements throughout the body in coordination with the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Then in the dorsal region, it is similar to the areas which are present in the medulla and the midbrain. So they contain the ascending and the descending tracts with the nuclei for the cranial nerves. Okay, so there are several nuclei which are present. So some of the important ones are pneumotaxic area and apneustic area. These are the part of respiratory center which will help in regulating the ventilation of breathing along with the medullary rhythmicity area. Remember this one? Medullary rhythmicity area, which is a part of medulla oblongata. Apart from this, it is associated with the 4 pairs of cranial nerve, that is trigeminal or the 5th cranial nerve, which is associated with chewing, abducens or the 6th cranial nerve, which is associated with the eyeball movement, the facial or the 7th cranial nerve, which is associated with the secretion of saliva and the tears or contraction of the muscles for facial expressions. Then the vestibulocochlear nerve or the 8th cranial nerve, which is associated with the balance and the equilibrium. So the nuclei for all these will be present in the pons. And the third part, which is superior to the pons, is the midbrain or mesencephalon. So this extends from the superior parts of the pons up to the diencephalon, and it is also 2.5 centimeter long. Remember this structure, aqueduct of the midbrain or the cerebral aqueduct. This is the one which conveys the cerebrospinal fluid from the 3rd ventricle to the 4th ventricle. So that opening, it is present in the midbrain. So also just like medulla and pons, midbrain also contains nuclei and the tracts. So this is the transverse section of the midbrain. As you can see that there are two projections on the anterior aspect. So these bundles of axons, these are known as cerebral peduncles, means little feet. The ones which are present on either sides, cerebral peduncles. So this consists of a number of axons, that is the tracts are present in this particular region. These for the corticospinal, corticobulbar and corticopontine tracts. So what does the name imply? These are originating in the cerebral cortex and they are supplying towards the spinal cord. In this case, corticospinal tract. In this case, it is supplying towards the medulla, and corticopontine tracts will be relaying in between cerebral cortex and the pons. Pontine nuclei are present in pons, right? So these are the three different types of tracts which are present in the cerebral peduncles. Now if you look at the posterior side of the midbrain, that's your midbrain, right? That's the spinal cord, the medulla, pons and the midbrain. So if you look at the posterior aspects, it consists of something called as tectum. Tectum means roof. So this comprises of 4 rounded elevations. As you can see, these one rounded elevations are present over here. So there are 2 superior elevations and 2 inferior elevations on either sides. So the 2 superior elevations, these are the nuclei which are known as the superior colliculi, means little hills. So these serve as the reflex centers for the visual activities. So they will be supplied with the neurons which are arising from the retina of the eye. So some visual input will be given to these superior colliculi. From here, the motor impulses will be sent towards the extrinsic muscles of the eye. So some visual stimuli elicit the movements of the eye, right? For example, you can track a moving image, right? Such as a moving car. You can track it, right? Let's say for example, I am moving this cursor. Your eyes can track it, right? As I am moving it, wherever it goes, your eyes are following it very quickly. So that reflex is coordinated at the superior colliculi. Apart from that, one more reflex is the scanning of the stationary images. Say for example, you are reading this statement, whatever is written over here. Okay, say for example, when I am reading the first line, your eyes are also tracking what I am reading, right? Through neural circuits from the retina of the eye to the superior colliculi. Now, as I have read this statement, though I am not moving my cursor over here, still you can read that line, right? So your eyes are tracking that stationary letters which are present over here, the stationary words which are present over here. So that particular reflex is also taken care of by the superior colliculi. These are also responsible for the reflexes which govern the movement of head, eyes and the trunk in response to some visual stimuli. Say for example, you see some ghastly sight. What do? You just move your head away. You just close your eyes. So it happens within fraction of seconds, right? So this is also taken care of by superior colliculi. Then the two inferior elevations, these are called as inferior colliculi. These are a part of auditory pathway. Now here the impulses will be received from the hearing, the receptors which are present in the inner ear. So these will be relayed towards the brain via these inferior colliculi. So these nuclei actually function in the startle reflex. What is the startle reflex now? Now suppose you are sitting quiet in a particular area. Okay, it's nice and quiet. Now suddenly if you hear a loud noise, say of a cracker or a gunshot, what will happen? You will startle, right? Suddenly if you hear something. So as you startle, your head, it will shake a little bit. Your eyes will close immediately. So you will make specific movement. So that is taken care of by these two nuclei. Now apart from this, the midbrain also comprises of other nuclei like the substantia nigra, means substance, black substance, because it is slightly dark in appearance. So the neurons which release the dopamine is extend from the substantia nigra towards the basal nuclei. So supposing if these nuclei are affected, or these neurons are affected which are passing through, which are helping in controlling the subconscious muscle activities, you lose the control over the muscular movement. So this will result in precipitation of the Parkinson's disease. Also present is the red nucleus on either side. So there are two red nuclei which look reddish due to the rich blood supply and also iron containing pigments. So axons from the cerebellum and cerebral cortex, they form the synapses in the red nuclei. So this will help you to control the muscular movements. Apart from this, there are certain other nuclei also which are associated with the cranial nerves, two cranial nerves, that is oculomotor nerve, that is the third cranial nerve, associated with the constriction of the pupils, changes in the pupil size and the shape of the lens. Apart from this, trochlear nerve or the fourth cranial nerve, which is associated with the movements of the eyeball. So this is to do with the brain stem. Coming to the reticular formation. So since it is associated with the brain stem, we are discussing it over here. Okay, so we have seen that in all the three parts there are well-defined nuclei. Also there are several tracts which are conveying the information in either directions. So apart from this, much of the brain stem also comprises of the small clusters of cell bodies, that is the grey matter, which is interspersed among the small bundles of myelinated axons, which comprises of the white matter. Okay, so it is present in the form of a network like structure, so where the white matter and the grey matter is mixed together. So it forms a network like arrangement, and that's called is the reticular formation. Ret means net. So due to its appearance, it is called as reticular formation. So it will extend from the superior part of the spinal cord through the brain stem, that is along the medulla oblongata, the pons and the midbrain, and it will also be associated with the inferior parts of the diencephalon. So these particular reticular formation, it comprises of both the types of neurons, the ascending as well as the descending one. So it carries out the sensory as well as motor functions. Now the ascending portion of the reticular formation, that is the ascending neurons which are present over here. So these are called as the reticular activating system, that is RAS. So this comprises of the sensory axons which are projecting towards the cerebral cortex, either directly or which are relaying through the thalamus. So most of the sensory inputs, these are given to the higher centers through these ascending portions. So these may include the visual and auditory stimuli. So you're looking at something, that is conveyed to your brain. You're hearing something, that is conveyed to your higher centers. The mental activities which are going on. The stimuli may be from pain, touch or pressure receptors, or the receptors which are present in our limbs or head, which keeps you aware about the position of your body parts. Okay, so the main function of this reticular activating system, which is the ascending portion of the reticular formation, is to maintain the consciousness. That is a state of wakefulness in which the individual is fully alert, aware and oriented. So all the visual, auditory stimuli, all the mental activities, these can stimulate the reticular activating system to maintain the consciousness. What do you mean by unconsciousness? Means what? When you faint, what happens? Do you come to know what is happening around you? Can you hear or see or feel or think what is happening around you? Now you are in a conscious state, right? You are listening to me, you are understanding the things, you are processing the things, you are alert, you are awake. But if you faint, you are unconscious. Or when you sleep, the reticular activating system is suppressed or inhibited. Okay, so the activation of this reticular activating system, it is also associated with the arousal, that is waking up from sleep. When you wake up from the sleep, your reticular activating system gets activated. It becomes active. Another function is to maintain the attention and alertness. When you are attending a class, you are paying attention to what your teacher is speaking. You are alert. You are trying to understand what the teacher is speaking. That means you are attentive, you are alert. And that's because of this reticular activating system. Now one more function of this reticular activating system is preventing the sensory overload by filtering the insignificant information. Now say for example, when you are attending this particular class, maybe some other activities are going on around you, right? There may be some noise of some vehicles, some other activities may be going on. Some site is going on wherein the workers are working. So there may be a number of sounds, a number of disturbances, number of inputs. But all of them don't reach your brain. So now if you are concentrating on what I am speaking, your mind will not concentrate on what is happening around you. It will not try to hear what is happening around you. So that information, it is ruled out. It will not reach your brain if you are paying attention towards what am I speaking. Okay, so that sensory order, imagine if all that reaches your brain. So there will be a chaos which will be produced in your mind. So that doesn't happen, right? So when you're paying attention towards something, all the other activities which are happening around you, you may not be consciously aware of that. Okay, so maintenance of alertness, wakefulness is the function of reticular activating system. So if it gets inactivated, you will sleep. So that's a state of partial consciousness from which you can be aroused. So when somebody tries to wake you up, so that will activate your reticular activating system, and you will come to know about the things which are happening around you, right? So when you are sleeping, your reticular activating system is inactive. Now supposing if there is a damage which is caused to this reticular activating system, it will result in coma. Heard of this? The person has gone into coma. You must have heard this, right? So that's a state of unconsciousness from which the person cannot be aroused. You cannot wake them up from this particular state. So here the brainstem and the spinal cord reflexes are active in the light stages of the coma. But in case of deep stages of coma, all the vital centers may get affected and the person may even die. Now this reticular activating system, it is also affected by several drugs. Say melatonin, it helps in inducing the sleep. Why do you fall asleep at night? That's because of this melatonin. It's a hormone also which is secreted. So that will influence the reticular activating system, inhibit and allow you to sleep. Also some drugs like general anesthetic also suppresses this reticular activating system. So your consciousness may be altered. So this is to do with the ascending portion. Now the descending part of the reticular activating system. So this has the connection towards the cerebellum, spinal cord. So it will help in regulating the muscle tone. Also it will help in regulation of the heart rate, the blood pressure and the respiratory rate. Okay, so these are all the functions of the reticular activating system. So in this particular video, what we have learnt, we have studied about the brain stem, which is a part of brain. It comprises of three parts: the medulla oblongata, the pons and the midbrain, which comprises of a number of tracts in the white matter and a number of nuclei. And also we have studied about the reticular formation, which has ascending as well as descending portions, which help in maintenance of the alertness and the consciousness. This is the reference. Thank you for watching.